بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. First of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. It's good to have familiar faces back, alhamdulillah. Today, inshallah, I'm going to continue from something that I started last week. That was the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and looking at some objections. Last week, what we covered was an argument from the Quran, how the Quran speaks about the existence of God. And the Quran presents four possibilities for the existence of a creator, and four possibilities of how how humans and the universe and everything that we can see came into existence. Today, inshallah, I'm going to continue from there and look at the what we can call the design argument for the existence of or the proof of God. I'm sure many of you must have heard this before, but it's always good to hear things, and maybe there's one or two things that additional that we can learn from this. Feel free to correct me and to share your thoughts at the end. We're all here to learn, and I would like to also learn from you. Before we start, everyone likes sci-fi, everyone likes Star Wars. I think Star Wars is one of the highest rated films, so I'm going to get a bit sci-fi. Imagine we're in the year 2100 or 2150, whatever tickles your fancy, you can choose the year. And we're now you're working for NASA, and NASA decides to take a trip. It finds a planet on a faraway galaxy, and this planet shows some resemblance of life. So NASA decides to send an expedition, and you are amongst the astronauts that go on this expedition. You land at this planet, and you realize that there's precise, carefully formulated structures, and you see water, there's air, oxygen for people to breathe, and there's enough sunlight and just the right temperature for fruits and vegetation to grow. Now, while you're exploring and you see this, what you see is you meet some habitat of this planet. Now you begin to speak to them. Bismillah, come inside. You begin to speak to them, and you ask them, how did you discover all this? And they tell you that, we were also working for our NASA, and we came upon this planet by chance. And suddenly, while we were on this planet, things began to grow, and by chance, all of this came into existence. Now, you know that the system on this planet is so precise, it's so carefully formulated, that it would be silly for someone to argue that all this came by chance, right? And you know this in your heart, and you know this in your mind. Now, if one planet, if we can say this about one ecological system or structure, that it's not possible, or we find difficulty in trying to accept that all this can happen by chance, then what do we say about the entire universe, everything that existed and everything that will come into existence? Can we argue that all this came by chance? Right? So today, inshallah, we're going to look at some of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation and how precise it is, and what we call fine-tuning. And I want to look at the possibility of arguing for chance, right? Things coming to into being by chance. First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان. And this means that the sun and the moon, they travel, right, with precision. They travel بحسبان. Husban is something that's calculated, right? It's set at a particular structure or a particular way, right? وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ, that the stars and the trees, they bow down in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the sky, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has raised it high and He has set the balance of justice. وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ, the balance of justice. In the Arabic language, the word mizan, it has a few different meanings. And these include balance, right, and divine precision. But the word mizan, it also refers to balance and harmony, right? So we can understand the word mizan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He set mizan, it refers to precision, balance and harmony. Harmony in how everything works together. Nothing opposes each other, right? And similarly in the Quran we can find indications of this cosmic precision that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set, and its order and harmony in the universe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ وَالنُّجُومُ مُسَخَّرَاتٌ بِأَمْرِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjugated for you the benefit that we receive from the day and the night. وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ, the sun and the moon. وَالنُّجُومُ, and the stars that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. مُسَخَّرَاتٌ بِأَمْرِهِ, they've all been subjugated to perform a certain task by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. In all of this structure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, this cosmos that Allah has created, these are signs for people, for those who understand. Now there's a brilliant quote from Imam Ghazali radiallahu anhu, in which he says, even the lowest of minds, how can even the lowest of minds, the most dull-minded people, if they reflect on the marvels of this earth and the sky, the brilliant fashioning of plants and animals, how can they remain blind to the fact that this wonderful world, with its settled order, must have a maker to design, determine and direct it, right? Even the most dull minds, if they reflect, how can you remain blind to the fact that this world, with its precision, its design, not have a maker? Now, when we look at, and there are so many verses in the Quran that reflect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's signs, right? This is one of the key themes that we find in the Quran, talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's signs. Therefore I'm not going to get into it, this was just one example. But in the recent years and decades, we see many discoveries in physics that also direct to or indicate the design of a creator and of a maker, right? And this is what we can call the fine tuning, right? Now, this fine tuning of this universe that we have, this is made up of several things, or various aspects. Firstly, if the laws of this universe, they did not exist, then life could not exist. If the laws did not exist, then life could not exist. Secondly, this universe that we have, it displays an order, a very precise, fascinating order. Without fine tuning, it would be impossible for this order to exist in harmony and with the precision that it does. Now what I'm going to do is just mention a few of these discoveries or things that we know about. First of all, let's look at the physical laws of the universe, right? And I'm just going to mention one or two of these. For life to exist, these laws must be created and they must be fine-tuned. Look at the law of gravity that we have. What is gravity, first of all? It's a force of attraction that between two masses. Without gravity, there would be no force to aggregate things. Without gravity, there would be no stars. Without stars, we wouldn't have a sustainable source of energy to facilitate life, right? This universe that we have would just be dark and it would just be an empty vacuum. If we look at the electromagnetic force, what is that? That is it's a force that affects everything within the universe, and the electromagnetic force is responsible for giving shape and hardness to things, right? And it gives strength to things. Why? Because without the electromagnetic force, atoms that we have, that everything is made of atoms would not exist, because nothing would keep the electrons in orbit, right? And if there were no atoms, then there could not be any life. Life will not exist without these atoms. Let's look at the cosmic order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created and that we can see right in front of us. When we observe the world, you know, if you ever seen, anyone's ever been stargazing, right, into the countryside at night time, you feel humbled by the beauty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. Living in cities, sometimes we can't appreciate the beauty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, right? But if you go stargazing or you see pictures that have been taken from, you know, high megapixel cameras, you feel amazed. The cosmic order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, it's absolutely precise, and it's something that, you know, makes all of us appreciate or think about the creator of this order. Let's look at the position of our planet. Our own planet, it's in the distance it is at the sun, from the sun. It's at a distance where it allows life to exist, right? It's not so far away where the oceans and life would freeze, and it's not so close to the sun where everything would be at boiling temperature, right? And this is known as the habitable zone, right? If we were further away, it would be too cold. If we were too close, it would be impossible to live. Let's look at the relationship of the sun to its moon. We know, the earth to our planet, our earth to the moon. We know that the earth, it's at a tilt, right? Now if there are some flat earthers, then I'm sorry, you know, it's a different conversation, but we know that the earth is at a tilt, and it spins on this tilt, on its axis. It's been doing so for millions, billions of years, right? Hundreds of millions of billions of years. It's been tilting and spinning on its axis. Now, what keeps it on its axis? Recent discovery tells us that the moon is the gravitational pull or the force from the moon is what keeps it on its axis, on the tilt. It allows it to move on that tilt, on its axis, because of the gravitational pull from the moon. If our earth has one moon, and that is the function, one of the functions that it performs, then there are billions and billions of galaxies and planets out there with their own billions of moons, it's impossible, right? And we cannot even comprehend the functions that these must perform, right? Because science hasn't reached that far. Our discovery hasn't reached that far. But it makes us marvel at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all this with a purpose, and all this must have a designer. Now, in light of all this, what explains all of this to come into existence? Number one is a chance. Can all of this fine-tuning and precise order of the universe and of the planets and the sun, can all of this happen by chance? Or is there a designer behind all this? First of all, if we were to argue that all this fine-tuning can happen by chance, and all of this precise order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created can happen by chance, and our solar system can occur by chance, then this would make reason, right? This would make reason redundant in everyday discussions. If we can argue that all this happened accidentally by chance, then we can argue that anything can happen by chance, and nobody has the right to reject this chance. For example, right, you're walking, it's nighttime, you see a light in the house, the curtains are open, and you see some money inside the house, the door's open, you go take the money, the jewelry, and you take it home, you steal it. If the police comes to you, and the police says, well, you have the exact same jewelry, we've seen you walking past the house, you have the exact same jewelry, how did you get possession of this, right? If someone can argue that it came into my possession accidentally and by chance, and I did not steal it, and nobody has the right to reject this argument, right? Why? Because you can argue for chance for anything, because nobody has the right to reject it, right? Similarly, somebody can argue that Islam is the truth because there's a chance that it's the truth, and nobody can reject this. Nobody can reject the idea of chance, for anything happening by chance, right? If we accept that this entire universe came into being accidentally and by chance, right? The point is that to argue that something so precise, right, something so marvelous can happen and occur by chance, it makes reason redundant. Why? Because people can argue anything happened by chance, and they would be in their right to argue for this. Now, or we can argue that all of this happened by a designer, because the physical laws and the order of this universe that we see is by necessity, right, and not by chance. Now, for us to argue that the creation of this universe and the order of this universe, the fine-tuning of the universe, was by pre-planning, and by there was intelligence of a creator behind this cosmos, this is the most rational explanation that we can think of. This is the same as someone going into the garden and seeing the flower bed very beautifully put into a particular order, flowers, very carefully chosen flowers, put into a particular order, if you saw this, you would say, well, this was designed by a gardener. I wish it happened by chance, because I have my own garden to sort out, and I wish chances like this occurred, right, where I didn't have to go and spend time in the garden, but it doesn't, unfortunately. Therefore, the most rational explanation for an intelligent design, right, or for design of this universe, is that there must be a higher intelligence who created this, a creator who created all of this. The last thing I'm going to mention is some people, some atheists, what they argue is that soon we will reach a stage in science where we will not have the need for God. Why? Because science will reach a stage where it will explain everything, right? If you look at the discoveries in recent times, in recent few decades, within a space of 60 years, humans went from the first flight to the moon, right? So people argue this, that soon science will there will be no need for God, and science will be able to explain everything. Well, firstly, when someone puts this argument forward, right, what they essentially claiming is that currently there are arguments in which God is the best answer, right? If we're arguing that soon there will be no need for God, what they're arguing is that there are systems, there are theories which we don't know, science cannot answer, and God is the best alternative, right? And to reject God would be nothing but blind faith in science. If we're arguing that there are soon, maybe we don't know when, right, but in some unspecified future, science will be the best explanation for everything, and we won't need God. What we're arguing is that currently there's a need for God because we don't understand anything, but we're going to still reject God anyway, and we're going to have blind faith in science, right? And everyone has blind faith in something, whether that's God or that's science. Secondly, we have to really consider, what does science actually answer, right? Science will tell us how things happen, the laws, but science does not answer fine-tuning, the beginning of the universe, the origin of life, or the nature, science does not answer the metaphysical questions, because that's not something that science can indulge in or begin to answer. So this objection that science will soon make God redundant, this is not correct. This is a fallacy. The last thing I'm going to put forward to you guys is a question, and I want you to answer this. When we speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designing the universe, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating the universe, the counter question this is an age-old question that's been answered from Greek philosophers, right? So this is nothing new. This is not a new question. This is something that the Greek philosophers, they try to answer, and even Muslim scholars, they answer this question. That is, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the universe, then who created Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If the universe was created by God, a creator, then who created this creator? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us firm belief, grant our children firm belief, and grant us death upon Iman. Jazakumullahu khairan.